I woke in the hospital to the steady beep of a heart monitor, my chest still raw from surgery. A nurse handed me a stack of papers, signatures I'd never written, a power of attorney I'd never granted. My own niece and nephew had declared me unfit and listed my house for sale while I was under anesthesia. But then the realtor called to confirm the owner's name. My name. Wait. Before we go any further, I gotta ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe. Elaine Barker blinked into the washed-out ceiling tiles above her, eyes still crusted from a sedated nap. Pain throbbed under her ribs. Post-op swelling, the nurses said. The painkillers softened the edges of the world, but the name Maple Key Realty sliced through like ice water. She shifted in the hospital bed, fumbling for her cell phone as it vibrated across the tray table. The caller ID read, Lauren Dwyer. Hello? She rasped, voice dry from the oxygen tube still clipped under her nose. Hi, Ms. Barker? This is Lauren Dwyer from Maple Key Realty. I'm sorry to call while you're recovering, but I just wanted to confirm. Are you the legal homeowner of 204 Alder Lane? Elaine's hand froze midair. Her body went still except for the slow beeping of her heart monitor. I am, she said slowly. Why are you asking? A pause crackled through the line. It's just, we received documents last week authorizing a listing. The file included power of attorney, signatures from 2 family members, Carla and Tom Barker, and an emergency notarization due to your mental health decline. She hesitated, but something didn't feel right. Elaine's stomach clenched. I never signed anything. I never listed that house. I don't care if I was unconscious. That's my home. I thought so, Lauren said, her voice tightening. I paused everything the moment the identification documents didn't match the deed title. I don't want to be involved in anything shady. Elaine pushed the hospital bed remote until it cranked her upright, pain surging as she rose. I want to see every single document they gave you. Every signature, every authorization, all of it. Yes, of course, Lauren said. I'll email you the file packet. It's about 22 pages, including scans. Elaine's thumb hovered over her phone. Send it now. I'm checking it here. The nurse walked in with a chart and a smile. Everything okay in here? Elaine turned to her, expression stone cold. Do you have a printer? The nurse blinked. There's one at the nurse's station. Why? Elaine didn't answer. She jabbed at the screen, opening her email as the message from Lauren arrived. A PDF attachment. Title: Alder Lane Listing Authorization. She handed the phone to the nurse. Print every page. The nurse raised an eyebrow but nodded and left. Elaine's heart thudded in her chest, but not from pain meds anymore. Her fingers trembled. Her lips pressed together in a flat line. 2 minutes later, the nurse returned with a warm stack of printer paper. Elaine yanked the top page free. The first document was a durable power of attorney. Her name sat at the top, bold, typed, and beneath it, an exaggerated signature curved in a way she'd never written, almost calligraphic. Her handwriting was small. This was bloated, performative. Below, Carla's name as executor, Tom's name as secondary signatory, a notarization from a notary public she'd never heard of, stamped in a city 40 miles away. The next page, a letter stating she had entered assisted living of her own free will and could not manage real estate decisions. Another page, a signed sales agreement, the price more than $400,000 below the home's appraisal value. Elaine's eyes scanned each page with cold clarity now. Her body had gone still. Everything slowed. Her world narrowed to the edges of the forged ink and the lie it tried to seal in place. On the 4th page, she saw it, her signature again, curled in big, swirling loops. Not hers. She stared at it in silence. Her mouth moved, but nothing came out at first. Then she whispered, as if someone else might hear from the shadows of the room. They forged me. Elaine's fingers tightened around the pages until the paper creased under her grip. 2nd page, 3rd page. The forged signature reappeared again and again, like a haunting. But what made her jaw lock was the timestamp on the first notarized page. July 14th, 11:07 a.m. Her surgery had started at 10:45. She looked down at the IV taped to her wrist. Her breath shook. Unbelievable, she muttered. The phone buzzed again. This time, a text from Lauren. FYI, they told me you'd been declining fast. Said you were making unsafe choices. I'm so sorry. Elaine didn't reply. Instead, she scrolled back through the PDF, this time not looking at the signatures, but at the lies written above them. Her mind replayed Carla's polite smile over family dinners, Tom's awkward silence when the mortgage came. They weren't just opportunists, they were planning this, timing it. She tapped her phone and dialed her attorney, Mark Halverson. It rang twice before going to voicemail. "Hi, this is Mark. I'm out of the country until August 1st. If this is urgent, email my assistant." Tara Elaine closed her eyes and exhaled through her nose. "Of course you are," she muttered. The nurse returned to check vitals, but Elaine waved her off. Later. A few minutes passed before another knock tapped at the door. This one hesitant, but familiar. Margot Ruiz leaned into the room, her wiry gray curls shoved under a baseball cap. "They said you could have visitors. You look like hell." Laney Elaine cracked a smirk. "You always know how to sweet-talk a girl." Margot stepped in fully, holding a reusable grocery bag that smelled faintly of cinnamon. "Brought you those peach cookies you like?" And, she glanced down at the papers in Elaine's lap. "What's going on?" Elaine handed her the forged documents without a word. Margot pulled her readers from her pocket, perched them on her nose, and flipped through the first few pages. Her face went pale. "What in the— This is criminal." Elaine nodded slowly. "And they filed it the morning I was under anesthesia." Margot's hands clenched the papers. "I knew it. I saw that little snake Carla outside your house 2 days ago, loading boxes into the back of a Lexus, said she was getting things in order. I thought she meant groceries or— God, Laney. I should have said something." "You're saying something now," Elaine said. "That's what matters." Margot grabbed a chair and sat down hard. "So what's the plan? You going to the press? The police?" Elaine didn't answer. She was already unlocking her phone, opening the camera. She started snapping pictures of every forged page, angles, stamps, names, everything. Then she filmed a slow pan of the entire document stack. "Start a paper trail," she muttered. "That's what Rick would have done." Margot watched, eyes glinting. "They think you're weak. They think you're alone." Elaine glanced up, her face calm but resolute. "If they thought I was dying, they'll wish I had." For a beat, neither of them said a word. Only the distant hallway chatter and the soft beep of Elaine's heart monitor filled the silence. Margot reached into her purse and pulled out a spiral notebook. "Use mine. Let's make a list." Elaine took it without hesitation. Page 1. Evident. Then her phone buzzed again. New text. This one from an unknown number. Just a photo. Elaine tapped to open it. A moving truck, parked in front of her house. Elaine stared at the photo on her phone. The moving truck angled across her driveway like a threat. Her chest rose and fell in slow, deep breaths, her jaw set. She tapped Lauren's number and put the phone to her ear. "Elaine?" Lauren answered instantly, her voice tight. "Did you see the file?" "I saw everything," Elaine said. "Listen carefully. I want all activity on my property frozen. No showings, no documents sent, no walkthroughs, not a single communication unless it's coming directly from me." Lauren didn't hesitate. "Consider it done. I'll notify my broker and flag the listing with an alert. No movement without verified ownership. I'll also put a hold note in the system. Confidential flag only." Elaine nodded to herself, her fingers trembling slightly. "Thank you, Lauren. I'm really sorry," the realtor added. "They lied well." But not well enough. Elaine ended the call. Her eyes flicked back to the moving truck photo. She zoomed in. A man with a clipboard stood next to it. She couldn't make out his face, just the outline of someone checking boxes that didn't belong to them. On instinct, she opened Carla's social media. First post. Auntie Elaine finally made the move to assisted living. Her choice, of course. So proud she's letting go and focusing on herself. Legacy. Elaine's breath caught in her throat. Beneath the post were a dozen smiling emojis and congratulations from clueless friends. She clicked over to Tom's profile, something she rarely did. There it was, a carousel of photos. Her dining room, restaged with someone else's placemats and candles. Her living room stripped of family photos. One shot had been taken from the top of the stairs, wide angle, the kind realtors used when they wanted to make a house look bigger than it was. The caption read, "Under contract. Excited for this next chapter." Elaine's hand balled into a fist. She opened her contacts and scrolled until she found the number. Edgar Lane. The phone rang 3 times before a deep voice answered. "Elaine? I need 10 minutes of your time, she said, and everything you remember about the deed. He didn't ask questions. I'll call you back on my landline. More secure. 2 minutes later, the phone rang again. The deed was finalized 12 years ago. Edgar began. Your name. Rick's name. No lien, no secondary rights. And I was there. Witnessed it with a notary. You remember? I do, Elaine said. But now Carla and Tom are using a forged power of attorney to sell it out from under me. They've already staged the house. They're telling people I'm mentally declining. Edgar was quiet for a moment. Then, unless a court declares you legally unfit, that house is still yours. I don't care if they walk in with 6 pages of forged signatures and a priest. They can't override the deed without a judge. Elaine swallowed hard. And if they try, they'll get burned, Edgar said flatly. I'll testify, if it comes to that. Elaine closed her eyes for a beat. Thank you. After she hung up, she opened Carla's page again. Scrolled. Stopped. A new photo had just gone up. 20 minutes old. The front gate. Her gate. Wrought iron. Painted white. And in the lower corner, someone had blurred out the carving Rick had welded into it years ago. Barker Family Home, EST 1986. It had always been there, etched in love and permanent. Now it was cropped. Cropped out of existence. Elaine stared at it for a long time, longer than she meant to. Then her phone buzzed with a calendar alert. One she didn't recognize. Final buyer walkthrough. Friday at 10 a.m. Attached note. Elaine will not be present. Medical declaration on file. She blinked. Read it again. Then again. Elaine clutched the discharge papers in one hand and her phone in the other. The hospital gown traded for jeans and a wrinkled sweatshirt Margot had brought from home. The nurse offered a wheelchair, but she waved it off. Her body ached. Her side throbbed with every step. But she moved like a woman walking toward a burning building, slow, deliberate, and unafraid. The Uber driver didn't speak much. Good. Elaine wasn't in the mood for pleasantries. Her eyes stayed locked on the blur of passing houses, calculating everything that might have already been taken, every heirloom, every photo, every piece of Rick's life still in that house, still hers. When the car turned the corner onto Alder Lane, her breath caught in her throat. The gate was closed. The Barker Family Home, EST 1986 engraving was still there, but spray paint covered half of it in a crude attempt to mask it. A neon pink X had been marked on the side fence post. The front door, visible through the trees, looked like it had been repainted. Pale gray, cold, sterile. She stepped out of the car and limped toward the front porch. Her key didn't fit. She tried again. Nothing. They'd changed the locks. She stood still for a moment, jaw clenched, then pulled out her phone. Answer, 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 she muttered. The call clicked. Back gate, Margot said. Already here. Elaine turned as a familiar clatter echoed from the alley. Margot appeared, winded but triumphant, holding bolt cutters the size of her torso, with her teenage grandson Caleb behind her. You didn't think I was letting you go in there alone, did you? Margot asked, handing Caleb a crowbar. The 3 of them pushed through the alley gate, crossed the overgrown yard, and reached the rear entrance. The kitchen door had been locked too. But one swift cut, one brutal twist of the crowbar, and they were inside. Elaine stepped over the threshold like a returning soldier. The air smelled faintly of cologne and microwave dinners. Her eyes scanned the space. Empty hooks on the wall where family photos had hung, the couch covered with a foreign throw blanket, a wine glass on the coffee table that wasn't hers. Her heart beat harder. She walked through each room, drawers half open, her antique record player shoved in a corner, one of Rick's framed military medals missing from the wall. And then, the kitchen. A letter taped to the fridge, printed in a soft cursive font. We're only protecting your legacy. You'll thank us when you're better. No name. No signature. Just that smug, passive-aggressive tone Elaine recognized like a fingerprint. She tore it down. The fridge was half-stocked. Almond milk, takeout containers, a champagne bottle. She moved to the drawers. First, cutlery, shuffled around. Second, junk, napkins, menus, receipts. Third, she stopped. Tucked under a flashlight and some rubber bands sat her wedding ring, still in its velvet box. But the box was stained, dented, like someone had thrown it in without a second thought. Elaine picked it up slowly, her hand trembling. She turned to Margot, who stood in the hallway now, eyes sharp. This was in the drawer? Margot nodded. And the dining room looks like someone hosted a showing last night. Elaine slid the ring onto her finger, her face hardening. I want it stopped, she said. I already called Edgar, Margot replied. He's prepping the injunction. You're filing today. Elaine took one last look around the gutted kitchen, her kitchen, Rick's kitchen, and something inside her settled. Not peace, not yet, but purpose. Her phone buzzed. Another notification, this one from the county clerk's office. Subject: scheduled emergency guardianship hearing, Friday, 9 a.m. Filed by Carla Barker. Elaine sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by legal pads, manila folders, and printout. Her wedding ring still hugged her finger like a silent witness, grounding her as she leaned over the unsigned purchase agreement Lauren had emailed after freezing the sale. The price jumped out first, $389,000, nearly $500,000 below market value for a house with her square footage, history, and zero mortgage. High-speed theft. Elaine muttered under her breath, circling the number with a red pen. She scanned downward. Buyer name, Michelle Faber. Underneath, a note in handwriting she didn't recognize. Close friend of the family. Expedited sale. No appraisal required. She circled that too. Friend of whose family? She whispered. The notary's stamp was next. It looked off. Uneven. Slightly pixelated. Elaine flipped to the final page. Another signature. Another notary stamp. This one from a town 2 counties over. She looked closer. The same name, Janet Halverson, appeared on both, but with 2 different stamp designs. One round, one square. Illegal, she said flatly. She wasn't a lawyer, but she didn't have to be to smell the rot. She tapped Lauren's contact and put the phone on speaker. Elaine, Lauren answered. Everything okay? Who is Michelle Faber? Buyer, Lauren replied. Carla said she was family, cousin by marriage or something. She's not, Elaine said. I've never heard the name in my life, Lauren exhaled sharply. Then it's a lie. She came in, made a full cash offer, waived inspection, and said she'd help move Carla and Tom into the house with you still living there. Elaine's stomach turned. I need that offer nullified. Forward me the notarized forms with metadata. I'm sending them now. A beep. Email received. Elaine opened the attachment and dragged it into her evidence folder. She added it to her growing spreadsheet labeled Fraud, Phase 1. From the living room, Margot called out, You're going to want to see this. Elaine stood slowly, every rib protesting the movement. Margot was hunched over her tablet, scrolling through Carla's latest Instagram stories. Look, first clip, Carla on a balcony, sipping champagne. Second, Tom holding up a bottle of mezcal next to a pool. Third, Carla lounging in a cabana with the caption, Work hard, play harder. When the universe blesses you, say thank you. Elaine stared at the screen, silent. You think that's Aruba? Margot asked. I think, Elaine said. It's stolen. She turned, walked down the hallway, and entered Rick's old office. The filing cabinet was still there, shoved to the back corner under a tarp. She ripped it open, file after file, bank statements, tax returns, blueprint, all arranged in Rick's painfully meticulous handwriting. She flipped until she found what she was looking for. Mortgage statement, final payoff notice, dated September 17th, 2013. She smiled grimly and tucked it under her arm. Next, the title office. She called the main line, got transferred twice, and finally reached a woman named Deborah. I need an emergency stop order placed on 204 Alder Lane, Elaine said. The deed is mine. Someone's trying to sell it fraudulently. I can file a temporary freeze, Deborah said. We'll need formal paperwork within 72 hours. It'll be there in 48. She hung up and returned to her desk just as her phone buzzed. A name flashed across the screen. Mark Halverson, her lawyer. Finally. Mark? I just landed, he said. Tara filled me in. Jesus, Elaine. How bad is it? It's coordinated, she said. Forged power of attorney, staged sale, guardianship petition. There was silence on the other end. Then, we're going scorched earth. Elaine's voice was steel. Good. As she hung up, she refreshed the county's public record database. The emergency guardianship filing had updated. Petitioner, Carla Barker. Supporting affidavit, Tom Barker. Grounds, mental decline, unsafe hygiene, hoarding tendencies, and emotional paranoia. Elaine's eyes didn't even twitch. Instead, she clicked Download, saved the PDF, and wrote across the printout with a black marker. Liars. Elaine stood in front of the bathroom mirror, holding the affidavit in one hand and her toothbrush in the other. She'd read the document 3 times already, but somehow the words got uglier each time. Elaine Barker demonstrates classic signs of cognitive decline, including memory lapses, mood swings, and self-neglect. I have witnessed her wander outside in confusion and repeat stories that never happened. Affidavit of Thomas E. Barker. She set the toothbrush down and stared at herself. She looked tired, paler than usual, but sane? Sane was written all over her reflection. She grabbed her phone, opened the camera, and started recording. My name is Elaine Barker. I am of sound mind. I am in my home. I am holding a forged legal document written by someone who hasn't visited me more than twice in the last year. If they want to take me down, they'll have to lie better than this. She saved the video and forwarded it to Mark, her attorney. Subject line: Round 1. Let's go scorched earth. 2 days later, the court evaluator arrived. A woman in her early 50s, practical haircut, crisp navy slacks, clipboard in hand. Her name was Janice Bolin, and she walked like someone who didn't like wasting time. Elaine offered coffee. Janice declined. For the next hour, Elaine answered every question with calm precision: current address, prior medical history, medication list, recent surgery, what year it was, who the president was, how many square feet her house contained. Then came the kicker. Have you ever wandered off and become disoriented in your neighborhood? Elaine's lips twitched. Only when I'm trying to avoid Jehovah's Witnesses. Janice didn't laugh, but she made a note. Elaine handed over her clean medical record, current prescription, and surgical discharge summary. Then she pulled out a photo packet she'd printed. Screenshots of Carla's staged listings, Tom's vacation reel, the forged notary stamps, and the family friend buyer with no verifiable relation. Janice flipped through each page in silence. This was the same week you were in the hospital? Elaine nodded. And your niece filed a guardianship petition claiming you were hoarding? Elaine gestured to the space around her. The clean counters, vacuumed carpet, and organized desk covered in color-coded folders. Janice looked up. This is more organized than my house. Elaine smiled for the first time in days. You should have seen it before they staged it. After Janice left, Elaine called Lauren. I'll testify, Lauren said immediately, before Elaine even asked. This entire thing smells like a bad Lifetime movie. They blindsided me too. Elaine's voice softened. Thank you. The hearing's in 3 days. I want the judge to hear everything, Lauren added. Oh, and I checked. Michelle Faber has a business registered under Carla's name. That friend of the family buyer? She's a shell. Elaine closed her eyes. Rage threatened to boil, but she kept it cold. Perfect. Put it in a statement the next day. Mark emailed. Judge assigned. Miriam Lowe, 63rd Probate Court. Known for chewing up fraud petitions and spitting them out. Elaine stared at her laptop screen and smiled, slow and sharp. She replied, Subject: Let's make it rain. 2 hours later, an unmarked sedan pulled up outside her house. Elaine was in the living room when the knock came. A woman stood on the porch holding a folder, badge clipped to her belt. Elaine Barker? Yes. My name is Christine Vale. I've been assigned as your temporary guardian pending the court's decision. It's a neutral placement for observation only. I'm here to stay for 72 hours. Elaine didn't blink. You're telling me I'm being watched in my own home? Christine's face didn't shift. Standard process. I just need to document your behavior and file a report. Elaine opened the door wider. Then let's get started. Christine Vale moved with clinical grace. Never nosy, never warm. Just enough eye contact to be polite. Just enough distance to remind Elaine she was under scrutiny. The court hadn't assigned her a warden, but it hadn't sent a friend either. Elaine noticed everything. The quiet notes scribbled while she made tea. The subtle glance toward her medication tray. The way Christine hovered in doorways without stepping all the way in. You sure I can't fix you some lunch? Elaine asked that first day, pouring soup into a pot. Christine offered a tight smile. I'll prepare my own meals, thank you. Just here to observe. Observe what? If I salt my chicken too much? No response, just a scribble. Elaine made no further effort to converse. By the second morning, Elaine had turned every room into a stage. Clean surfaces, fresh flowers, neatly folded blanket, even a color-coded pill organizer placed front and center on the kitchen counter. She followed every rule to the letter. took her meds on time, ate balanced meals, watered the garden, smiled when spoken to. But beneath the quiet compliance, she moved like a tactician. She tucked her old iPhone, factory reset, disguised in a recipe book, on a shelf above the living room. Motion detection on. Voice activation recording. Christine might file a report. Elaine was building her own. On Wednesday afternoon, the doorbell rang. Lauren stood outside, a manila envelope under her arm. "Thanks for coming," Elaine said, opening the screen door wide enough to let her voice carry. Lauren held up the folder. Everything notarized, every signature I witnessed, and a typed statement confirming the sale was initiated under false pretense. Christine appeared in the hallway, arms crossed. "I'm Elaine's realtor," Lauren offered. "This pertains directly to the petition being reviewed." Christine nodded. "Please leave your documents on the table. I'll note the interaction." Elaine's voice didn't waver. "I'll be adding these to my court packet, just as soon as I'm allowed to represent myself again." Later that night, Margot came over under the pretense of bringing Elaine lentil stew. She didn't even make it 5 minutes before whispering, "I called the neighbors. Carol, Eugene, the Feldmans. They're all on board. We're meeting Thursday night. You'll talk. They'll talk. We're leaving with affidavits." Elaine raised an eyebrow. "You're organizing a pro-Elaine rally in my living room?" "Damn right," Margot said. "You think I'm letting some court officer spend 3 days around you without hearing from the people who actually know you?" Elaine chuckled. "Bring cookies. I'm bringing a notary." The next day, just after lunch, the doorbell rang again. Carla. Her voice floated through the open window like perfume laced with poison. "Elaine? Just wanted to check in. See if you needed anything. Maybe clear up a few things before court." Christine opened the door before Elaine could move. "I'm sorry," Christine said, stepping forward. "Miss Barker is not receiving unscheduled visitors." "Oh, I'm family." "You're not on the contact list," Christine said. "You'll need to go through the court." Elaine stood behind the curtain, out of sight, watching the tension ripple through Carla's manicured posture. For the first time in weeks, Elaine smiled without bitterness. That night, the house was quiet. Christine sat in the guest room, typing notes on her laptop. Elaine sat in Rick's old study, flipping through the legal pad she'd kept since the hospital. The pages were almost full now. Times, names, document trails, strategy flows. It looked less like a diary and more like a prosecutor's war map. On the final page, she wrote in all caps, "Control is a paper game. Time to file." She tore out the sheet, tucked it in the folder marked countersuit, and reached for the pen again. Then her phone buzzed. A text from Mark. "Christine's report is due Friday morning. Expect a hearing that afternoon." Clocks ticking. The courtroom was smaller than Elaine expected. More wood-paneled conference room than grand hall. But what it lacked in size, it made up for in tension. Elaine sat at the petitioner's table, back straight, folders aligned in perfect order beside her. She wore her late husband's navy blazer over a crisp white blouse, and her wedding ring caught the overhead lights like a talisman. Christine sat behind her, expression unreadable. Mark leaned in. "Let them perform. You stay steady. This judge doesn't care about tears. She cares about truth." Elaine didn't blink. "I'm not here to perform." Across the aisle, Carla entered like she'd studied courtroom drama on YouTube. Flowy blouse, heels too loud for hardwood, and a box of tissues clutched like an Oscar prop. Tom followed, avoiding eye contact with everyone. "Docket 1173, the clerk called. "Petition for emergency guardianship of Elaine Barker. Hearing presided by Judge Miriam Lowe." Judge Lowe stepped up to the bench like a woman who didn't tolerate excuses before coffee. She adjusted her glasses, scanned the room, and motioned to begin. Mark stood first, voice calm. "Your Honor, we're requesting immediate dismissal of this petition based on falsified medical assumptions, fraudulent real estate filing, and unlawful attempts to transfer property through power of attorney without consent or capacity declaration." Carla's attorney popped up with well-rehearsed urgency. "Your Honor, my client was only trying to protect her aunt, who's been exhibiting signs of delusion and isolation. She feared for Miss Barker's safety." "Save the dramatics for closing," Judge Lowe said. "Let's see the proof." Lauren was called first. She stood at the witness table in her neutral-toned pantsuit, firm and composed. "I'm the listing agent assigned to 204 Alder Lane. I was approached by Carla Barker and Tom Barker, who claimed to have durable power of attorney. The documentation they provided raised immediate red flags. She held up a printout. The ID didn't match the deed's ownership. Signatures were inconsistent. I paused the listing and notified the county registrar. The judge peered over her glasses. So you halted the sale on your own? Yes, Your Honor. Noted. Next, Edgar Lane. He walked slowly to the stand, but his voice was unwavering. I witnessed the original deed. Rick Barker and Elaine had full co-ownership. When Rick passed, the deed transferred automatically by right of survivorship. No liens, no contingencies. He slid a copy of the deed across the table. Judge Lowe studied it. This deed's bulletproof. Yes, ma'am, Edgar said. And forged power of attorney doesn't override it. Then it was Elaine's turn. She stood, calm but electric with quiet fire. Your Honor, I'm not here to argue my sanity. I'm here to stop a fraud. Carla Barker used my hospitalization to declare me incompetent. While I was under anesthesia, she changed my locks, staged my home, and tried to sell it without my consent. She opened a folder, handed it to the bailiff. Inside you'll find hospital records confirming I was of sound mind post-op, screenshots of the listing with her caption about me choosing assisted living, and notarized statements from neighbors who interacted with me during the alleged period of decline. Judge Lowe flipped through the packet, eyebrows raised. Elaine pulled out her phone. I also have audio. With the court's permission, Mark said, standing. Judge Lowe nodded once. Elaine pressed play. Carla's voice echoed across the courtroom speakers. She'll be gone in a year anyway. We might as well cash out while the market's hot. Rick left her the house, but he didn't say anything about not monetizing. A pause. Then Carla again. She's too out of it to fight back. Trust me, this'll be over before she knows it. The courtroom went silent. Judge Lowe slowly removed her glasses, set them down, and rubbed her temple. Judge Lowe set her glasses down, laced her fingers, and spoke without raising her voice. This court finds sufficient evidence of attempted property fraud, misuse of medical authority, and elder exploitation. The guardianship petition is denied, effective immediately. Furthermore, she turned to the bailiff. Notify the district attorney's office. This now falls under criminal jurisdiction. Carla opened her mouth, but her attorney subtly grabbed her wrist, shaking his head. Judge Lowe continued. Both Carla Barker and Tom Barker are hereby barred from the premises of 204 Alder Lane until the DA completes its investigation. Any attempt to contact the homeowner will be considered obstruction. Elaine didn't smile. She didn't flinch. She simply adjusted the folder in front of her, then nodded. The gavel dropped. Court adjourned. An hour later, Elaine sat in her living room, the blinds open for the first time in weeks. Christine had already packed up and left, leaving behind a short, unsigned note. You're sharper than half the attorneys I've worked with. Good luck. Elaine barely had time to sit down before her phone rang. Miss Barker? Said a calm, clipped voice. Yes? This is Investigator Jude Mason, District Attorney's Office. We'd like to schedule a sworn statement regarding attempted deed fraud and abuse of power of attorney. Elaine leaned back in her chair. When? Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., County Office Building. I'll be there, she said. The next call came 2 hours later from the Department of Social Services. Ma'am, this is a courtesy notice. A formal elder abuse case has been opened regarding the conduct of Carla Barker and Thomas Barker. Based on the guardianship petition, notarized documents, and real estate filing, we're escalating to full review. Elaine hung up, exhaled, and then did something she hadn't done in over a month. She opened every window in the house. That evening, a locksmith arrived, a real one, licensed, bonded, paid in full. He replaced every lock on every door, front, back, basement, garage. Elaine stood on the porch with arms folded, watching him work as twilight fell over Alder Lane. When he was done, she signed the receipt, then tossed every old key into a metal mixing bowl. She lit a match. The brass hissed and blackened. Laney, Margot's voice called from across the street. Elaine turned. You're late to your own party. Margot grinned. Get over here. We've got lemonade, ribs, and a chocolate cake the size of a Buick. Elaine chuckled, and for the first time it wasn't out of bitterness. Margot's backyard was buzzing, folding tables stretched under strings of soft lights, familiar faces, neighbors, old co-workers, even the UPS guy, were seated with plates piled high. Carol played soft jazz on the portable speaker. Someone's kid was chasing fireflies. Elaine stood in the middle of it, overwhelmed. Then someone clinked a glass. Everyone turned. Margot raised her cup. To the woman who fought like hell while healing from surgery. To Elaine Barker. Still on the deed. Still in her house. And still not taking crap from anybody. Applause rippled through the yard. Elaine stepped forward, lifted her glass, her voice cut clean through the late summer air. To bad plans? She paused, letting the silence stretch just enough. Poorly executed. Laughter. Real, belly-deep laughter. She took a sip. Margot leaned in and whispered, "You're dangerous when you're calm." Elaine's eyes sparkled. "I'm just getting warmed up." Elaine had just poured herself a cup of tea when the doorbell rang. The sound startled her, not because she wasn't expecting anyone, but because something in its timing felt rehearsed, calculated. She moved to the window before approaching the door, pulling the curtain back and in. There he was, Tom Barker, standing on her porch with his shoulders drawn inward and a faded baseball cap crumpled between his hands. He looked like a man who'd walked out of a courtroom and into a confessional, hoping one might cancel out the other. Elaine opened the door but didn't say a word. Tom didn't step forward. He stood just beyond the threshold, eyes flicking between her and the hardwood planks under his shoes. I know I'm not supposed to be here," he said quietly, "but I didn't know where else to go." Elaine leaned against the doorframe, letting the silence stretch a little longer than politeness allowed. Finally, she asked, "Are you here to confess, or are you here to save your own skin?" He looked up at her then, and the answer was already written on his face. She stepped aside anyway, letting him in, not out of kindness, but control. Tom walked into the living room slowly, as though the walls themselves were judging him. He didn't sit until Elaine gestured to the armchair across from hers. Even then, he perched on the edge like a child called into the principal's office. "I didn't know it would spiral like this," he began, voice cracking. "Carla said you wouldn't even notice, that it'd all go smoothly." Elaine set her tea down and met his gaze, her eyes dry and sharp. "And you believed her?" she said. Not a question, a fact. Tom exhaled hard, pressing his cap flat between both palms. "I didn't forge anything. I just signed what she gave me. I thought you were being taken care of. Not—" He trailed off, looking toward the floor. "Not erased." Elaine stood and crossed the room, opening a drawer in the sideboard. She pulled out a blank affidavit form, a pen, and a small notary seal packet she'd retrieved earlier from Mark's office. "If you're truly sorry," she said, placing the items in front of him, "then write it. Sign your name to every action you took, every document you touched, every lie you didn't stop." Tom's hand hovered over the paper. "Elaine, if I put all that down in writing, I could be charged." "You already are being charged," she interrupted. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. But a confession might reduce the damage, or at least show you have some shred of decency left. He hesitated for a long time, staring at the paper like it might bite. Then he shook his head slowly. "I can't," he muttered. "I'm not ready." Elaine nodded once, as if she'd expected nothing more. Then came a knock at the door. She opened it to find Lauren, holding a thin folder in one hand, her face unreadable. "I just came from the records office," Lauren said. "We had the original documents reviewed. Forensics confirmed what we suspected." Tom didn't just witness the fake power of attorney, he wrote it. The ink pressure, the slant, even the pattern of hesitation in the signature matched perfectly with the real estate forms he submitted. Elaine stepped aside, letting the information float into the room like smoke. Tom sank deeper into the chair. "You had them analyzed?" Elaine folded her arms. "You left fingerprints on every lie." He stood, hastily grabbing his cap. "I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. I just didn't think you'd fight." Back Elaine walked to the door again, this time holding it open with no warmth. "Then you never knew me. And maybe you never wanted to." Tom left without another word. He didn't look back. That night, Elaine sat at her desk, the house quiet but humming with tension. She created a new folder on her laptop. Barker versus Barker. Civil action into it. She uploaded every document, every screenshot, every confession by omission. Then she opened her phone and sent one text to Mark. They had a choice. They made the wrong one. File. Everything. "I want permanent restraining orders. I want damages. I want names in ink." The article ran on a Tuesday. Front page of the Maple County Register, just below the fold. Elder fraud attempt foiled. Local widow reclaims home after legal battle with family. The photo was grainy but recognizable. Elaine standing outside her front gate, arms folded. The engraving, Barker Family Home, EST 1986, just barely visible behind her shoulder. She hadn't even realized the reporter had snapped it during her exit from the courthouse. The story was thorough. Too thorough for Carla's comfort. Quotes from court filings, excerpts from the judge's statement, and a brief summary of the audio recording that had turned the case. Carla and Tom were named outright. So was the real estate company, though Lauren had been cleared of all wrongdoing and was even quoted as a cooperating witness. Elaine read the article slowly, sitting at her kitchen table, the morning light warming the floor beneath her bare feet. She didn't smile, not exactly, but her breath came easier. By noon, her inbox had over 30 new emails. Some were short and anonymous. I don't know you, but I read the story. Good for you. What your niece did is unforgivable. My mother went through something similar. You are not alone. Others came from people she hadn't heard from in years. Old coworkers, high school classmates, even her dentist from over a decade ago. One message stood out in particular. Elaine, you may not remember me, but I lived down the block from you in the 90s. My parents used to say you were the kindest woman on Alder. I just wanted to say, you still are. Elaine sat with that one for a while, reading it twice before replying with a quiet, thank you. Across town, the ripple effect reached Carla faster than she could manage. By Wednesday morning, the law firm where she worked as a junior associate had placed her under formal review. Internal ethics officers requested a statement. The HR department requested her swipe badge. A senior partner, who'd once smiled a little too long at Carla during office parties, now refused to make eye contact in the hallway. At first, she tried to spin it. She's confused, she told one colleague. It's all a big misunderstanding. But the court documents were public, and the audio was real. By Thursday, her office had gone quiet. Not cold, not hostile, just silent. People stopped greeting her, stopped looping her into meetings. Emails were suddenly delayed or handled by others. By Friday, she stopped showing up altogether. Tom didn't fare much better. Elaine hadn't spoken to Emily, his wife, in over a year. But word still got around. The divorce paperwork had already been filed by the time Elaine's lawsuit was processed. A neighbor saw him hauling bags into the back of a beat-up Corolla, his shoulders hunched, eyes hidden behind dark glasses. The house looked stripped, the porch light turned off even during the day. Emily, it turned out, had read the article 3 times. She'd highlighted the part about the forged signature. The week after the story broke, Elaine received a call from Stacy Hanlon, coordinator for the Maple County Council on Elder Affairs. We're hosting a panel next month, she said. It's for National Elder Justice Week. We'd love to have you speak, not just as a survivor, but as someone who stood up before the system even caught up. Elaine paused, fingers resting on the edge of her mug. She didn't know if she was ready for that kind of spotlight, but she also knew what silence had cost her before. I'll do it, she said softly. As long as you let me bring props. Stacy laughed. Props? Elaine glanced at the thick labeled folder sitting on her desk. Receipts. The following week, Judge Lowe issued her final ruling. No mental impairment, no grounds for guardianship. Full ownership of 204 Alder Lane confirmed. All fraudulent transactions nullified. Elaine received the judgment in a thick envelope, the legal stamp still faintly damp with ink. She didn't cry, but when she pressed her hand against the manila paper, she let it rest there for a long time. On Sunday, she went for a drive. The sky was a pale blue, the kind Rick used to call wedding day weather. She passed by the modest apartment complex where Carla had relocated, a beige 2-story building with rusted stairs and peeling railings. Carla's new world was smaller, tighter, stripped of illusion. Elaine didn't stop. She didn't even slow down. She simply drove past, windows down, hair loose in the breeze, the courthouse envelope in the passenger seat beside her like a silent co-pilot. The lockbox sat at the very back of the bedroom closet, behind 2 suitcases, a rolled yoga mat, and a decades-old Christmas wreath no one had bothered to hang in years. It was navy blue, metal, and heavier than it looked. The key had been taped inside a manila envelope labeled in Rick's blocky handwriting, for Laney. if they ever come. Elaine sat on the bed with the box between her knees, heart beating like she was about to uncover buried treasure or a trapdoor. Margot stood nearby, arms crossed, as if she too felt the weight of what might be inside. "You sure you want to do this today?" Margot asked gently. "You've had a hell of a few weeks." Elaine didn't answer right away. She ran her fingers along the edges of the box, the cold metal grounding her. "If he left it," she said finally, "then he knew this was coming. And if he knew, maybe he also knew what to do next." She turned the key. The lock gave with a soft click. Not rusted, not jammed, just waiting. Inside, everything was wrapped in layers of tissue and tucked carefully into compartments like a soldier's. The first item Elaine lifted was a set of 3 cassette tapes, each labeled with black Sharpie, deed, letters, for Laney. Next, 2 photocopies of the original deed, both notarized, both clean and sharp, folded in plastic sleeves. Beneath them sat a sealed envelope. No address, no date, just her name. Elaine opened it with fingers that trembled, not from fear, but from the slow return of something she hadn't felt in months. Closeness, not memory, not nostalgia, present. The letter was written in Rick's familiar hand, his pen pressure heavy, as if even his words wanted to leave a dent. "Laney, they'll come for it one day. I don't know who, and I don't know when. But if you're reading this, it means someone tried to strip you of what we built. So listen to me. Stand firm. Do not doubt yourself. This house, and everything in it, belongs to you. I saw the way people looked at you after I got sick. They thought you'd fall apart. You didn't then. You won't now. I left the rest on tape. Couldn't fit everything on paper. You've always been smarter than them. And stronger. Don't let them forget it." Elaine didn't make a sound. She just folded the letter slowly and laid it on the bed. Her eyes were full, but the tears didn't fall. Not yet. Not until she reached for the old Walkman in her nightstand drawer, popped in the tape labeled, "For Laney," and pressed play. Rick's voice crackled into the room, deeper than she remembered, a little slower, as though he'd known she'd be listening in the stillness of grief. "Hey, baby. If this is playing, something's gone wrong. Or maybe someone tried to make you feel like you don't belong in your own home. And if that's the case, you already know what to do." Elaine covered her mouth as the tears finally came, silent but steady. Rick kept talking, telling stories, giving advice, reminding her where he'd stashed the backup copies of the mortgage statement, behind the dog, food bin, don't ask, and pausing occasionally like he was sitting right beside her, watching her face change with every word. When the tape ended, Elaine rewound it by hand and gently placed it back in the lockbox. She didn't shut the lid. Instead, she pulled a brand new fireproof safe from under the bed, one Mark had insisted she install last week, and began transferring everything over. The tapes, the deed copies, Rick's letter, even the original cassette player. Margot helped without speaking, her eyes glassy. A few hours later, Edgar arrived with 2 large boxes and a tool belt slung over one shoulder. "I upgraded the outdoor system," he said, patting the top box. "New cameras, full perimeter coverage, night vision, facial ID alerts, remote access through your phone." Elaine raised an eyebrow. "Facial ID?" Edgar grinned. "Let's just say if Carla tries to sneak up the driveway again, the system will greet her by name." Elaine chuckled, then stood and looked around her house. No longer a battlefield, but something closer to fortified ground. She felt Rick there, in the bricks, the beams, the very door frames they'd painted together. She turned toward the window where the late afternoon light was settling gently across the kitchen floor. Then she said, to no one in particular, "Let them try again." She smiled. "I'm ready now." The civil hearing was scheduled for 9:30 a.m. sharp, and Elaine arrived 20 minutes early, dressed in a navy blazer, silver scarf, and the soft confidence of someone who no longer needed to prove anything, only to finish what had already begun. Her folders were neatly organized, evidence tabbed in red, witness statements in blue, and court transcripts in green. Mark walked beside her, briefcase in one hand, the other adjusting his tie. "She'll be flustered," he said. "This is a different kind of courtroom." No room for tears this time. Elaine didn't look at him. Her eyes were fixed ahead. "Good. I'm not in the mood for theater inside." The courtroom was half full. mostly quiet observers, a few journalists, a woman from the Elder Protection Board seated in the back. The clerk announced the docket, and within minutes, the bailiff opened the double doors. Carla stepped in, a step behind her new attorney, younger, less seasoned, eyes flicking around like he was already looking for the exit. Carla wore beige, no jewelry, no lipstick, just carefully styled helplessness. Elaine noticed immediately. Tom wasn't with her. Coward, she thought. Couldn't even sit through his own consequences. Judge Lowe entered with the same brisk energy as always, glasses perched low on her nose, hair pulled tight. She took her seat without greeting and immediately called the matter to order. This court has reviewed the evidence presented in Barker versus Barker, she began. Before we proceed to testimony, I have a few questions of my own. She turned to Carla's side of the room. These documents, Judge Lowe said, lifting a thick packet of printouts, were submitted under oath. They include forged signatures, false medical claims, and one audio recording where the petitioner refers to the defendant as, let me quote this properly, too out of it to fight back. The room went still. Carla's attorney stood, lips parted. Your Honor, if I may. You may not, Judge Lowe snapped. Sit down. She turned toward Elaine. Mrs. Barker, would you like to make a statement before I rule? Elaine stood slowly, walking to the front of the courtroom with her notes in hand, but she didn't glance at them once. I came here today not because I had to, she said, but because I wanted every word of this to be on record. Carla Barker is not a victim. She is a planner. She waited until I was in surgery to forge documents. She staged my house while I was in recovery. She used my name, my history, and my family connection to take what she never earned. Her voice remained even, steady. She didn't just steal my trust. She tried to rewrite it. And the worst part is, she did it under the banner of family. Elaine paused. The silence deepened. I don't want revenge. I want consequence. Because family doesn't steal from family. And when they do, they don't get to pretend it was love. She sat down. Judge Lowe cleared her throat. Thank you. 10 minutes later, the ruling was read aloud. Judgment for the plaintiff. Damages awarded. $85,000. Full coverage of attorney's fees. Permanent. Restraining orders issued for both Carla and Tom Barker. All false filings stricken from record. Guardianship petition formally expunged. Carla didn't cry. She just stared at the floor, lips pressed thin, her lawyer whispering something she clearly wasn't hearing. As the courtroom began to empty, a court clerk approached the bench with an envelope. Judge Lowe opened it, glanced inside, and raised an eyebrow. One final note for the record, she said, her voice slower now. Following a petition submitted by the Maple County Historical Preservation Board and supported by community vote, the property at 204 Alder Lane, the Barker family home, has been granted full historical protection status. She looked directly at Carla, then at Elaine. That means it cannot be altered, listed, or sold without the express written consent of its living deed holder, which remains in perpetuity, Elaine Barker. Mark leaned over and whispered, That wasn't me. That was someone in your neighborhood. Elaine didn't respond. She simply exhaled, quiet, measured, and closed her folder. No applause, no cheers, just the sound of one door finally closing. Carla's termination came quietly, no grand announcement, no forwarded email chain, just a short meeting in a closed-door office. A folder slid across the table, and the subtle shift of power leaving her hand. The firm offered no public explanation. They didn't have to. The headline had done all the talking. She packed up her things in silence. A single plant, a photo of her dog, a coffee mug that read, #BossBabe. By the time she exited the glass doors for the last time, no one looked up. No one said goodbye. Her friend circle thinned within days. Group chats went silent. Invitations stopped coming. She wasn't confronted, just ghosted. The kind of social exile reserved not for villains, but for embarrassments. Even the ones who privately agreed with her wouldn't risk being seen agreeing publicly. Tom, for his part, didn't stay long. After the ruling and the restraining order were finalized, he moved to Indiana, or maybe Ohio. No one was quite sure. He left behind a half-empty house and a marriage dissolved in paperwork. One neighbor said they saw him hauling out boxes late at night, head down, as if even the moon was watching. He never said goodbye to Elaine. She wouldn't have answered if he had. Elaine, meanwhile, stood at her kitchen counter one morning, watching the coffee drip and the sunlight catch on the freshly painted walls. The new cabinets gleamed. The garden out back, replanted with hydrangeas, black-eyed Susans, and rows of deep green kale, looked like it belonged in a magazine spread. A thank you letter sat on the table beside her. She had just mailed a check, $15,000 to the Mid-State Elder Defense Network. No press release, no ribbon cutting, just a quiet gesture for the next woman who might find herself exactly where Elaine had been, and need someone to believe her before it was too late. Later that week, the town superintendent called. They were launching a civic curriculum on elder justice, funded partly through local donations and a quiet grant from the Attorney General's office. "We were wondering," he said, voice hopeful, "if you'd be willing to come speak. Maybe to the high schoolers. Let them hear what this looks like before it's too late." Elaine smiled, stirring sugar into her tea. "You'll have to cut me off at 10 minutes, or I'll turn it into a TED Talk." That Saturday, Lauren and Edgar returned, toolbox in one hand, a black velvet pouch in the other. "Time for the finishing touch," Edgar said, crouching beside the porch steps. He opened the pouch and pulled out a small brass plaque, engraved in block serif letters, "Guarded forever." Beneath it, 204 Alder Lane, Est 1986. Elaine watched as he drilled it into place, flush against the white trim, polished until it caught the afternoon light. "No one'll miss that," Lauren said, brushing her hands off. Elaine turned to look at her front steps, freshly painted, yellow, bright and unapologetic. Rick had hated yellow, said it looked too loud, but now, the bold stripe of it across each wooden plank looked like defiance made tangible. Elaine bent down, dipped a brush into the tray, and swiped a final stroke across the bottom step. Then she stood back, took in the house from top to bottom, and nodded. The porch light clicked on behind her. Somewhere down the block, kids laughed. The wind moved gently through the trees, and the house, her house, stood tall in the quiet. Then her phone buzzed. A name she didn't recognize. Text message. One line. "Would you be willing to consult on another case?" Elaine's eyes narrowed. Her fingers hovered above the screen. She didn't answer. Not yet. She turned, stepped back into the doorway of her home, and let the door close behind her with a soft, certain click. Elaine was awake before the sun rose. She always had been an early riser, even before the surgeries, the lawsuits, the betrayals that made headlines and whispered circles alike. But this morning wasn't born of habit. It was one of those rare days that began not with dread or obligation, but calm, a knowing sort of peace that wrapped itself around her shoulders like one of Rick's old flannel shirts. She stepped barefoot onto the kitchen tile, the grout cool beneath her feet. The kettle was already warm from the pilot light, and as she poured water over the tea bag, she could smell the faint traces of lemon balm and chamomile drifting up like a quiet reminder. You're here. You're still here. Outside, her garden shimmered with dew, delicate threads of silver between the kale rows, the first beams of gold hitting the hydrangeas just right. Elaine took her mug in both hands and stepped onto the porch, the screen door groaning softly behind her, just as it always had. There was no wind, only the hush of a street still sleeping, the promise of a day untouched. She walked the perimeter of the yard, checking the soil, adjusting a planter, deadheading a few blossoms with her thumb and forefinger. Everything was growing again, and this time, no one could uproot it. At precisely 8:02 a.m., a knock came at the gate. It was Caleb, Margot's 12-year-old grandson, in a too-big hoodie and scuffed sneakers, carrying a lopsided cherry pie in a tin that looked like it had already survived 3 generations of potlucks. "My grandma says you're a fighter," he said, holding it out with both hands. Elaine smiled and took the pie gently, like it might break if handled without care. "No," she said. "I'm just a woman who got tired of being underestimated." Caleb squinted, as if trying to decide whether that was the same thing. "She also says you made the news for being scary." Elaine gave a soft chuckle. "Tell your grandma she's not wrong." After he left, Elaine brought the pie inside, placed it on the table next to a small wooden frame. Inside it, matted and clean, was the official final copy of the deed to 204 Alder Lane. Her name, typed in bold. The seal stamped in thick blue ink. No cosigners, no conditions, no family friends lurking behind forged forms. It was mid-morning when her cell phone rang. A number with a polished area code. San Diego, maybe. Or Scottsdale. "Hi, this is Kelsey from Ridgemont Realty," chirped a too-bright voice. "I was just reaching out to see if you'd be interested in listing your home. We're offering pre-market." Elaine didn't wait. She laughed. A full, unbothered laugh, and hung up mid-sentence. She didn't owe politeness to strangers trying to profit off what others had already tried to steal. Instead, she walked back to the porch, the sun higher now, the light catching the brass plaque Edgar had installed. Guarded. Forever. She sat down in her rocker, the framed deed tucked beside her on the table like an old friend, and crossed one leg over the other. Eyes closed, breath slow, she tilted her head toward the sky. "If you're out there," she whispered to no one in particular, "if you're still watching, still plotting." Her lips curled into the smallest smile. "Try me again. I dare you." A beat passed. Then, a whisper carried not by wind, but by sheer certainty. "Next time, call the owner first.